2021. We are meeting remotely via Zoom to hold a roundtable on the following three measures. PR 24-443, the District of Columbia Housing Authority Board of Commissioners, Ms. Ronnie T. Harris Confirmation Resolution of 2021. PR 24-481, the District of Columbia Housing Authority Board of Commissioners, Ms. Melissa Lee, Confirmation Resolution of 2021, and PR 24-416, the Real Property Tax Appeals Commission, Mr. Olafi Abamu Paul, Confirmation Resolution of 2021. We will begin with the two mayoral nominees for the District of Columbia Housing Authority Board of Commissioners. The District of Columbia Housing Authority was established by the Housing Authority Act of 1999. The agency is led by a director who is appointed by the Board of Commissioners. And the Board of Commissioners is a 13-member governing body made up of district, community, and business leaders, including 3 members representing the DC Public Housing constituency and 1 member representing the Housing Choice Voucher Program participants, and 1 member filling the newly created commissioner position that is appointed by the DC Council with specific background expertise in public housing development and or management. The DC Housing Authority plays an oversized role in the district's commitment to preserve and expand affordable housing. Due to decades of federal disinvestment in affordable housing development nationwide, as well as in DC, there has been steady deterioration in units because federal resources just have not been made available. Moreover, the DC Authority has turned to the local government for assistance for repair resources. The authority is also responsible for administering the Federal Choice Voucher Program that in current years, HUD has expanded availability and frequently uses this program as for replacement units for traditional public housing. Therefore, the authority's Board of Commissioners focuses on both improving the quality of the district's public housing units and on assuring that voucher recipients have safe sanitary housing in the private sector. Current law requires the commissioners to demonstrate knowledge of and competence in 1 or more of the following areas: corporate governance, public housing law and regulations, real estate and construction, public housing development, operation and management, subsidized or nonprofit housing production and development, multifamily housing development or management, business, finance and investments, community-based redevelopment policies or activities, public management or administration, personnel or procurement administration, municipal finance or law, philanthropy, and social services. The commissioners are charged with the following responsibilities. 1, review and approve all contracts for goods or services having a value of more than $250,000. Making and implementing rules, bylaws, and policies and regulations necessary or appropriate for the effective administration of the authority. Disseminating rules and procedures for the election of the elected commissioners and to conduct the elections. And 4, periodically evaluating the executive director's job performance and, quite importantly, ensuring quality service pavilions to the public housing residents. Many of the agency's programs are technically complex and require specialized knowledge of public housing law and management, as well as affordable housing development and financing. I am hopeful that today's roundtable and the pending performance oversight hearing may be instrumental in informing the public about the agency's work in our city, the community, and for those residing on the properties and utilizing the vouchers. This year, the council added 2 new members with multifamily development experience to the board, bringing the total number of commissioners to 13. And of the 13, the mayor now appoints 6 commissioners and names the chair. Of the 6, she must appoint 1 housing choice voucher recipient and 1 board member with development expertise. Today's roundtable is to hear from the mayor's Housing Choice Voucher Recipient Board nominee, Ms. Ronnie Harris, and the mayor's choice to fill the remainder of an expired term, Ms. Melissa Lee. I'll start with Ms. Harris. Okay, Ms. Harris is being appointed as a Housing Choice Voucher Program recipient member, replacing Ms. St. John for a term to end July 12, 2023. Ms. Harris works for AmeriHealth in DC, where she manages a variety of health plans and is responsible for working with over 160 healthcare providers. She is responsible for training, education, building, and maintaining positive working relationships between the plan and the providers. Ms. Lee is being appointed as a public commissioner, replacing Neil Albert for the remainder of an unexpired term ending on the 12th of July, 2022. She is Senior Vice President for Capital and Investments with the McKinney Group, a DC real estate company. She is responsible for structuring and growing the capital, investment, and fund management for the company, and she serves as vice chair of the company's investment committee. She manages the deployment of capital in the real estate projects and oversees investment relationships and fund management. You will also today hear from the mayor's nominee for the Real Property Tax Appeals Commission, Mr. Ofemi Abayame Paul. The Real Estate Property Tax Appeals Commission was created to conduct fair and impartial real property assessments, appeal hearings for the citizens of the District of Columbia. The commission's objective is to ensure that appellate real properties are assessed at 100% of market value, based on the properties similar in size and utility, so that an equitable tax burden is shared. The Real Property Tax Appeals Commission is the 2nd level real property assessment and appeals process. And prior to filing with the Real Property Tax Appeals Commission, a 1st level administrative appeal must have been filed with the DC Office of Tax and Revenue. Mr. Paul is a real estate professional with over 16 years of experience in real estate property assessments. He began his career as a residential assessor and then transitioned into a role as a commercial assessor, focusing on valuing all types of commercial property. Given the financial challenges that many real property owners face due to the pandemic, the commission's caseload has also been severely impacted with more appeals. As such, I'm very curious to hear from Mr. Abayame Paul's professional experiences and how he might apply his expertise throughout the year to help us overcome what may be a very trying year for real property tax appeals in the district. And with that said, I will now turn to my colleagues that are present. I recognize Councilmember Alyssa Silverman in the event she wants to make a few opening remarks. Councilwoman.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Bonds. And I saw you this morning, so let me say good afternoon to you. And I said hello to the nominees prior to us beginning the hearing, but hello to them and congratulations on your appointments and hello to everyone joining us. Okay, I think I've said all my hellos. So I do want to thank you, Councilmember Bonds, for holding this confirmation hearing. Sometimes as we get toward the end of the year, we have an urgency to holding hearings so that we can put people on boards, important boards like this one. So I really appreciate you prioritizing this hearing because DCHA is such an important agency to our city, and putting good commissioners on the board is really critical right now. I've said it probably at every DCHA hearing, but it's my belief that DCHA is absolutely critical to creating a more equitable District of Columbia. And that's why these two appointments are so important for us to scrutinize, and then of course to place on the board, because the board is critical to making sure that this agency is meeting certainly its legal and fiduciary requirements, but I would say ethical and moral requirements as well to our low-income DC residents. So DCH board needs to be held accountable to DCHA residents. I think that's been an issue in the past. It also needs to be accountable to this committee, to the mayor, of course, and to the entire council. And I'll add this in, Councilmember Bonds, like increasingly to DC taxpayers, because as you noted, there are declining federal resources from HUD. And increasingly, it's local governments like our own that's being asked to fill in the financial gap. So even though it's seen as an agency that's independent from district government, increasingly DCHA is relying on district funds. So therefore, it really needs to be accountable to us. And that means that being a DCHA commissioner, Ms. Lee and Ms. Harris, is so important. This is one of the most important. I know all the commissions are important, but this is one of the most important in my mind because of your mission. As I mentioned, and Councilmember Bonds mentioned, this is a body that is legally and financially responsible for DCHA. And your job is critical. You need to monitor DCHA's legal obligations, review agency finances, and propose multi-million-dollar contracts, speak up about concerns, and watch out for conflicts of interest. And I pause there because while DCHA should be really focused on making sure that we have affordable housing for working class Washingtonians, for our low income working class, Washingtonians who are working hard every day. Unfortunately, the agency has been more in the news because of ethics violations and harassment allegations and things that end up being a distraction from the agency's mission. So that is why, with all due respect, Ms. Harris and Ms. Lee, I will be asking some questions. I've reviewed your nomination packets, and certainly you are two people who I think will bring passion and subject matter expertise. And I think in Ms. Harrison's case, like real world lived experiences that will be valuable for the board. But what our job is to make sure that we just address any possible issues that might bring some concern. And I will be probing about those. Those are like conflict of interest issues, as well as concerns about staying on the board for the entire term. So that's a little preview on what I'll be asking. I want to thank you both, Mr. And I just want to make sure, Mr. Abayomi Paul, am I pronouncing your last name correctly, or can you pronounce your last name for me?
It's Abayomi Paul.
Abayomi Paul, Mr. Abayomi Paul. I might not be able to stick in there for your part of the hearing, but I do want to thank you as well for agreeing to be a nominee. on what is a very important task in terms of assessment. So thank you all very much, and thank you, Councilmember Bonds.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman Silverman. And you're right, you will have questions, I will have questions, and I believe that our nominees will have answers. And so I'm really looking forward to this. You're correct in that this agency is at the top of everyone's list these days, because the pandemic has taught us that housing is really critical to the success of a community. And we want to make sure that you're partners with us as we move to make the authority and its properties all that it can be. And as I told one of the directors, so that you and I, if we are there, that we will also enjoy living there on the property. And of course, for you, Ms. Harris, want to make sure that whatever the circumstances are in the private sector, that they are really suitable. So we want to make sure that all of our households have the best quality housing that we can look after, provide, and assist with. So thank you all very, very much. And we will be talking about the our taxes and how we would like some changes, but we won't beat you up. I promise you, sir, today you'll have the floor. This is your nomination review. So thank you all very, very much. So we will start then. I do not see any other council members present at the time. So we're going to now turn the floor over to the nominees having an opportunity to make their opening statements. And first, we're going to hear from Ms. Ronnie Harris. Welcome, Ms. Harris. And you can begin when you're ready.
Good afternoon, thank you. So I'll begin with my testimony. I'd first like to say good afternoon, Chairperson Bonds, members of the Committee on the Housing and Executive Administration and staff. I'd like to start with thanking you all, thanking the committee for holding today's hearing to consider my nomination, and also Mayor Bowser for nominating me to serve on the District of Columbia Housing Authority Board of Commissions. My name is Ronnie Harris, and over the years, I've personally navigated through several DC housing programs, which I believe will bring some beneficiary perspective to the board. I'm also a current Housing Choice Voucher holder, and for the past more than 20 years of experience with working alongside with other DC residents in regards to housing and healthcare. I'm proud to be one of the many success stories from DC Housing Authority that shows that these programs do work. I'm currently employed in DC by AmeriHealth Caritas District of Columbia as an account executive in the Provider Network Department. In this role and overall during my 13 years with the company, I've helped ensure district residents are afforded the same healthcare outcomes as their neighbors. As we know, stable housing is one of many critical factors tied to healthcare outcomes. I myself was once in need of housing services as a single parent years ago. Without the availability of affordable housing in the district, I truly believe that the current path I have been on would have been much harder to achieve. I was very fortunate to cross paths with people willing to assist me through the sometimes difficult and confusing processes in obtaining low income and affordable housing. I was in my early 20s when I was introduced to organizations like MANA and Bread for the City. There was a time in my life when I was in desperate need of housing assistance, and MANA assisted me and was able to help educate me, advocate for myself. By learning and understanding my housing rights, I was able to give back to others in the community. I volunteered and advocated for fellow residents across all 8 wards, especially for those who are unable to advocate for themselves. Most recently, as a proud first-time homeowner in Ward 8, I worked with Hart Middle School and Southeast, distributing groceries and to communities experiencing barriers with accessibility for affordable and nutritious foods. I believe my personal experience with the housing system, my volunteer and advocacy work in the community, and my position at AmeriHealth will aid me in my work with the DC Housing Authority Board. It will allow me to have more open, productive, and transparent dialogue in regards to programs, structures, successes, and barriers. I look forward to working with all board members and being utilized in any capacity to help achieve our goals, making sure that any new or existing housing program and/or contract meets the needs of our residents. I'm committed to learning and doing what's needed to achieve our goal, and I'm thankful for the opportunity to serve. Thank you for considering my nomination. This concludes my testimony, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Harris. My colleague and I will each take maybe 10 minutes, 10 minutes to chat with you, ask you a few questions. And maybe I will start with an area that we want to make sure it's on the record that you have shared with us, and that is your excuse me, your disclosure information. I have the file before me. My colleague does as well. Just want to make sure that you are comfortable with all of the answers that you have given us. And I won't read them all, but I'll just touch on 5 or 6 of them. You were asked to provide the name of each business entity from which you or your immediate family have received or are receiving income in excess of $1,000 for services rendered during the past 5 years. And your answer, of course, was NA, not applicable. Is that your position?
Yes, ma'am.
All righty. And then I'll just skip down to number 12. Do you or does any member of your immediate family have any interest financially or otherwise that may directly or indirectly pose a conflict of interest for you in performance of your duties? And you indicated
no, absolutely.
okay. All right. Very good. All right, very good. And then I'll skip down again. Let's see. All right. Have you ever been investigated, disciplined, or cited for a breach of ethics for unprofessional conduct by or been the subject of a complaint in any court, administrative agency, professional association, disciplinary committee, or other professional group?
Absolutely not.
All right, well, thank you very much. And your paperwork will be a part of the file. You did specify for number 27, you described your qualifications, including your background and experience relevant to service as a commissioner on the District of Columbia Housing Authority. You said for the past 15 years, you participated in affordable housing programs and am currently a Housing Choice Voucher recipient. You believe your past experience of being a product of the housing system will allow a dialogue and discussion in regards to program barriers and programs that are currently successful. And you did complete your oath here. And so I will just read that and you can affirm for me. Maybe that's the best way. Would you state your name? I.
Ronnie Harris.
Okay, attest and affirm.
Attest and affirm.
On the penalty of perjury that the answers.
On the penalty of perjury that the answers.
And materials provided.
And materials provided.
To the committee.
To the committee.
In response to this questionnaire.
In response to this questionnaire.
To the best of my knowledge.
to the best of my knowledge,
are true, accurate, and complete.
are true, accurate, and complete.
Okay, and if confirmed,
And if confirmed,
I agree without reservation
I agree without reservation
to respond to any summons
to respond to any summons
to appear and testify
to appear and testify
before this committee.
before this committee.
All right, well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. Now, very quickly, just really want to, if you just relax for a minute and let's talk about what your understanding of the duties and responsibilities as a commissioner. How do you see your role on the board?
Well, definitely I'm new to it, and there are going to be a lot of things that I'm going to have to learn. I'm ready to get started. But from what I can ascertain is that there are going to be programs that are already in existence that are going to be brought to the board for whatever type of discussion, for things that need to be changed, updated, or totally removed. There are going to be new program suggestions and policies and procedures that we may want to review. And there are also going to be bids for contracts, maybe for other programs that are not in place as of yet, but will cost to be put in place, along with the funding for current programs that are already in place. Not quite sure where I'll fit in between that, but I'm definitely willing to be utilized in the best position possible for the board to get the best out of it, for us to have these decisions made. But again, it's all going to be kind of new, and I'm definitely capable of learning and ready to get started.
Okay, I noticed that you do not have professional experience in affordable housing development or public housing management, and just wondered, since a great deal of the board's business requires some knowledge of these matters, how would you be informed to cast a vote as it relates to some of the matters that you previously mentioned, where you might have to vote on a project and you know that it will deliver housing, maybe a project where you're not sure of the what the dollar value should be. How do you see your votes materializing? What will influence you to vote one way or the other?
Well, not having something particular to speak about, I can only tell you that I would come from a perspective. Again, I'm a product of being in in-house Section 8. I'm a product of having Section 8 voucher. I know what some barriers are with how the programs currently are. I have some ideas on how. I always wondered why I wonder why the program isn't set up this way, and just learning and understanding from what goes into the decision making. I have questions that could be asked, that could have been asked years ago to older existing programs that may be relevant now. It's hard to say until I encounter an actual situation where we have something to actually vote on and finding out what the reason we're voting for. It's really hard, other than the fact that perspective, dollar amount, things like that. I'm a quick learner. And although I don't have any background in working for the housing authority or low income housing, I work for AmeriHealth. We actually work closely off and on with reaching out to different programs and DC housing assistance. Although we're health insurance, we try to put our enrollees in the right direction, reach out to this organization, reach out to that. So we're always, keeping an eye out on what programs the district has available to district residents, just to be as like a referral to them and having them reach out.
Okay, do you believe the housing authority has room for improvement in any particular area?
I would want to say yes. I think it would be more fair once I have more of the background information on what goes on behind closed doors, which I'm not on the board, but from outside looking in, I just think we have a lot of district residents who are in need of housing. And it's hard to understand from a perspective of not being in the mix of what the decision-making pieces are, why we have so many and what's the issue totally with the funding. So, but there could be better. This is the nation's capital. I really think that we should be able to rein in any person who's looking for affordable, suitable housing that wants it. And programs have long wait lists, and they have for years. And it's just, again, to be fair, I don't know everything that's happening, but my perspective on the outside is that would be one of my issues, is what is the holdup and what's the problem with that, and how we can address it, to maybe get it working better and moving faster.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm over my 10 minutes, so I'll turn to my colleagues. I may come back to you, but thank you very much. Councilwoman Silverman?
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Bonds, and good afternoon, Ms. Harris. Thank you for agreeing to be a nominee and spending a lot of time talking about housing, as well as getting up to speed on some of our financial issues with the authority. So first, I want to apologize to you. I had a brief interruption while you were testifying, and it happened right when you said that at one point in your life you were really desperate for affordable housing. And I think that's when you spoke about perhaps how you got involved in DCHA housing. Can you just explain to me once again sort of what DCHA housing you've utilized?
So I have I got involved with Manna and Bread for the City.
Okay, right.
I left off with that, and they provided me with a lot of resources and education on what I needed to do, what programs I needed to sign up for. I started out in-house Section 8, so basically it wasn't a DC Housing Authority development directly, but this was an apartment complex. You probably heard of them, Kelsey Gardens.
Oh yes.
Yeah. I lived
Okay.
in Kelsey Gardens for 13 years. I was 22 years old, very first.
Okay.
Nevertheless,
So it was a project-based Section 8. Kelsey
Yes.
Gardens is project-based Section 8, right?
yes, it
Okay,
is.
great.
And then had to transition from Kelsey Gardens into a housing choice voucher because of new ownership. They were taking over the building, tearing it down. We were supposed to come back, and we had what was called enhanced vouchers at the time. Okay. This was supposed to be temporary. We were going to move back. 8 years I had that voucher, and I had to move back once they did finish that project. Of course, the housing crash happened. It was 2008. So I think that's what took it longer to happen. Nevertheless, I did move back, stayed for 2 years, and then I participated in another program, which is the home purchasing program through DC Housing Authority. And I purchased my home almost the 16th. Tomorrow will be 5 years that I've been.
Congratulations.
Yeah. I've also done some work in assisting other residents with, I think you have a program, it's called, now I can't remember it just because off the top of my head, but there's some other temporary housing programs that are funded through DC Housing Authority as well that may provide housing for like a year for certain residents and for them to get on their feet after case management and things. Can't think of that name right now.
So, okay, you're doing great, by the way. And I know this happens to me all the time, is that you want to remember something and you can't, because you're like, oh, I want to make sure. So, but you're doing great. So I would just, I think Councilmember Bonds said this as well, just relax. And I know it's hard to pretend like this is a conversation, but try as hard as you can to do that, because I think your memory will be helped by, or my memory's helped by that too. So here's why I asked you that, actually, because so if I'm correct, Kelsey Gardens was in Shaw. Is that right?
Yes, it was.
It's like 7th and P. I believe it was the projects we've done in that P and O Street area was part of the reason why Kelsey Gardens was redeveloped.
Yes.
Right. And then you got the vouchers, which took you off site. And these are the issues we're dealing with DCHA. I would argue that your lived experience by being a DCHA project-based DCHA, resident and community member is very valuable. So here's my question. Did you ever engage with the DCHA board during those 13 years that you lived at Kelsey Gardens, or in the time that you started to take advantage of the homeowner program? Like, what's been your engagement as a DCHA resident with DCHA's board? And it's a fine answer to say none, but just curious. Or if you ever considered, like, were there issues at Kelsey Garden? I imagine there were a lot of questions about the redevelopment and having to leave Kelsey Gardens that you might have wanted answered. Like, did you ever think to attend a board meeting, for example?
So unfortunately, I never attended a board meeting. For whatever odd reason, back then, I wasn't aware of the DC Housing Board of Commissioners. I don't think it was ever brought up to me in conversations. Just wasn't a thing. And social media back then was something I really wasn't on. But I definitely reached out to Housing Authority on a regular, whether I went up there myself on a Tuesday for a complaint, or I reached out to whoever my caseworker was via email, and had some issues. And
what was your experience, if I may interrupt? So what was your experience engaging with DCHA, and how do you think those experiences would influence your actions and perhaps your agenda as a commissioner?
Well, again, to be fair, this was several years ago. Back then, it was very tough to get in to DC Housing with any issue, concern, or even positive message. Just the appointment process was a pain, especially if you were like me. I was a working single parent, and to know that I could only walk in on a Tuesday and not be guaranteed that my caseworker would be there or I could speak, that was a barrier for me. But getting contact phone numbers, each opportunity I got, I made sure that I kind of just utilized that. But my experience was, it was hard to make contact for whatever concern.
And what kinds of concerns, I'm just curious, did you feel you needed to reach out to the authority on?
Well, moving back from the old Kelsey Gardens to the new Kelsey Gardens, there was new management. The new apartment complex was no longer Kelsey. In the first year, I don't believe that they got the DC stipend, in which that they were allowing low-income housing within the new apartment. But contractually by the courts, they were supposed to allow us back, the old residents. So the second year, they did recertification, and they were going by HUD standards, right? HUD standards for recertification and income requirements are different than the housing choice voucher recertification. So in essence, I was doing two recertifications a year, and I thought that was wrong. Thought that was incomplete. I didn't think it made sense. I reached out to my contact, my caseworker at DC Housing Authority, and he explained that no, absolutely, you shouldn't be doing two, because you recertify with us. You can do whatever update with them. Nevertheless, it got to a point, long story short, I got an eviction letter because I didn't pass the recertification with the apartment complex because of my income, but with housing choice voucher, my income was totally fine. So it was just really strenuous. It was a mess. Nevertheless, I ended up moving out and purchasing my house all at the same time. Come to find out that they weren't following the process right. So the educational piece for these new developers coming in, thinking they understand how housing choice vouchers and HUD work together or in conjunction, is really not there, or wasn't there 5 years ago.
Okay.
So that was the most turmoil I had to go through by being a voucher holder. Once I got it, was wondering what's going to happen. I'm in the middle of buying a house. DC Housing Authority has all my income because I'm going through the purchase program.
Right.
And yet my landlord is telling me that per HUD, I'm overqualified. But those are two different income.
So I'm sorry that you had that experience, but I'll tell you what I got out of your answer. one of the things I want to find out is, are you somebody who is really going to dig in to get the details? And I will tell you that your story is evidence to me that you are a detail-oriented person, that you're going to sift through some of the bureaucratese and legalese, that I'm not a lawyer either. And I am convinced that's a barrier to letting regular people just understand stuff. And you didn't let that get in your way, and that you're an advocate. So that's really, so that's important to me. And that's what I'm looking, you're an advocate for the people who live in the housing. I do have one technical question. I feel like my time is running out from Councilmember Bonds. So one of the reasons why your position is open is because the prior housing seat holder, DCHA housing seat holder, was found ineligible because of, I believe, her income because her income had exceeded the income, or no, that's not right, Councilmember. She was found ineligible. Let me look at my notes. She was found ineligible for the seat because she was graduating out of the voucher assistance, I believe. She no longer received voucher assistance. And it sounds like you're doing really well at AmeriHealth. Is that you have a 2-year term, or she turned in her voucher because her income went up, my staff was informing me. So it sounds like you are somebody who is on their career, doing really well in their career. Is that a concern at all for us, that you might be graduating out of assistance from DCHA before your 2-year term is up, and we might I will say I asked this question with mixed emotion, because we obviously want to see you continue to succeed and earn more income, but I ask it from the point of view as somebody who has to think about, is this, you're going to make an investment, and we're going to make an investment in you, and then a year from now, are you going to do so well in your job that you might no longer require the housing assistance that is the reason why you're in this seat?
Okay,
that makes sense.
Yeah, I totally understand the question. So it's a concern, but here's my understanding of the program that I am participating in. Regardless of my income, if it gets to a point where it does exceed it, it's not an immediate, the program doesn't immediately take the voucher from you, the assistance from you. That assistance stays with me for 1 year, okay? And then after that year, that's when they do it. They don't just immediately remove that. That's one of the good things about this program that they have with the home purchasing. So as long as I definitely will follow the guidelines always and notify the Board of Commissions and, the housing program with any updates with my incomes and things like that. But I don't believe within the 2 years, I will reach that threshold.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
Yeah, I don't believe so. But again, I don't have those numbers. But if in fact anything changes, I'll definitely let you guys know. But I don't think that's a concern, at least for a good year plus. So we should be good.
All right. Well, thank you, Councilwoman Silverman. Ms. Harris, I just have a follow-up question. You were explaining pretty much the trauma that you have been through, taking advantage of the various housing programs in the city. And just wondered, are you committed to trying to put together some ideas that you can bring to the board as a member of the board that might make it a little easier for others who also may be involved in trying to get, let's say, a voucher, or really just trying to navigate the various housing programs that we have? And especially what I gleaned from your comments with Councilmember Silverman, it sounds like there's a tremendous need to maybe have a one-stop application process so that individuals and households don't have to go through the trauma you went through of dual evaluation in the same at the same time. So I just wondered what your thoughts are about that, and if you see yourself, sort of taking a little bit of a leadership as a board member that might, move in that kind of direction.
Absolutely. I would love the opportunity to be able to provide some insight, input, and strategical ways that we can change certain things under the DC Housing Authority programs. I'm looking to learn where I can fit that piece in. And of course, once I get acclimated, if appointed onto the board, I'm definitely going to jump on the opportunity to do what I can and also learn first, because I'm sure there's a lot of things. Once I get that information and get acclimated, it may help me even better with some of the suggestions or ideas I may or may not have, to go ahead and put that down and bring it across to the board to see what we can do. But you're really good on that one-stop application.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be marvelous. That would have been marvelous.
Right. To me, it just seems like a better way.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for that.
Mm-hmm.
We will now turn to we will now turn to Ms. Melissa Lee, and I'm trying to read this little tiny type down here. Okay. We'll turn to you for your testimony, and I understand that there may be, we actually do have some public witnesses, and I'd like to get your testimony, Ms. Lee, and then we'll come back to our public witnesses because they may be for both you and Ms. Harris or even for Mr. Paul. All right, so we'll now hear from Ms. Melissa Lee.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Bonds, members of the Committee on Housing and Executive Administration, and staff. My name is Melissa Lee, and I would like to thank you for holding today's hearing to consider my nomination as a public commissioner on the District of Columbia Housing Authority Board of Commissioners. I would also like to thank Mayor Bowser for nominating me as a public commissioner. In 1996, I relocated from New York to Washington, D.C. I chose Washington, D.C. because of its proximity to my hometown, the availability of universities to complete my education, the job market, and the accessibility of quality housing. After arriving here, I continued my work in the financial services industry and transferred to the University of the District of Columbia, where I completed my Bachelor of Business Administration and Finance. I then attended George Washington University, where I received an MBA with a concentration in finance and investments. I also hold the Certified Treasury Professional designation, which is granted by the Association for Financial Professionals. I currently serve as the Senior Vice President of Capital and Investments at the Minkiti Group, where I'm responsible for structuring and growing the capital, investment, and fund management activities of the organization. My day-to-day activities are focused on aligning internal and external sources of capital for deployment into sponsored and joint venture real estate investment opportunities, primarily in the office, retail, industrial, and/or mixed-use assets. In addition, I am focused on building the operational infrastructure necessary to support investment fund management as well as investor relations. Prior to joining the Minkiti Group, I served as the founder and managing principal of Lee Square Consulting Group, where I delivered advisory and analytical strategies that optimize organizations' financial and capital structure. This engagement included work with a community development corporation, where I delivered organizational financial management strategies that created greater budget and reporting transparency for the multifamily real estate portfolio and community development block grant program. These two activities informed my introduction to community development and demonstrated the variety of tools and resources that could be combined to impact our residents' quality of housing. In addition, I led the audit process and provided compliance on the housing tax credit programs. Previously, I've held finance positions at organizations that included the Sheridan School, where I served as Chief Financial Officer, and Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority, where I served as the Director of Treasury Operations and oversaw the Treasury strategies for a $3 billion annual operating and capital budget. In addition, I served as a trustee on 4 of WMATA's employee retirement plans, with the responsibility for setting and monitoring the strategic direction. I've also served in Treasury and investment positions at the Maryland State Retirement and Pension System, Amtrak, Pepco Holdings, and Chevy Chase Bank, which was acquired by Capital One in 2009. Serving as a public commissioner of the District of Columbia Housing Authority Board of Commissioners provides an opportunity for me to share my financial management expertise in a capacity that will support the goal of preserving and expanding quality affordable housing. It does not end with quality affordable housing, but extends into sustainable communities that must exist to embrace all residents and ensure opportunities that facilitate the improvement of every resident's life. It is well documented that secure housing is the foundation that allows people to build and focus on the other areas of their life that lead to personal and professional fulfillment. My professional experiences are deeply informed by financial management practices that require stewardship of public assets. My various roles in public sector and community-facing organizations have provided me with a great sense of the challenges that come with aligning capital needs with available sources and filling gaps with grants and financing. There is a delicate balance that the public organizations manage as they prioritize immediate capital and organizational needs with longer-term goals while fulfilling their mission. My roles at WMATA and as a consultant at a community development corporation were focused on designing sustainable capital strategies that would preserve and expand the organization's assets. It is a rewarding exercise to bring my knowledge of budget, financial reporting, grants, financing, audit, and compliance into a role where you see the impact of financial stewardship through the preservation of existing and acquisition of new assets that ultimately serve the public. The commissioner role creates a similar opportunity where I will bring my financial management knowledge and skills to help impact how the District of Columbia Housing Authority provides affordable housing, our most critical public asset, to our residents. I conceptualize the Board of Commissioners as a channel for diverse thoughts and opinions that are looking for ways to come together to support the goals of the Executive Director and advance the deployment of financial and operating resources for the benefit of Housing Authority residents. In a more specific manner, I believe that my expertise will be most effective on the Committee on Audit and Finance. I bring awareness of audit and financing structures, as well as an ability to understand the effectiveness of execution. During my career, I've had an amazing opportunity to work for myriad organizations that provide a community benefit, from utilities to transit to education and to community development. The common thread for me has been financial stewardship, with the goal of seeking ways to maximize the community benefits that impact the lives of residents. My goal, if confirmed as a commissioner, would be to extend this thread to the affordable housing community. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lee, and I will not leave you out of the review, your financial disclosure. And so I will again pick a few areas, see where you have any. Okay, here is one. Provide the name of each business entity from which you or your immediate family have received or are receiving income in excess of $1,000 for services rendered during the past 5 years. And you want to give us your answer on the record?
Yes, the Minkiti Group, the Lee Squared Consulting Group, Sheridan School, and formerly the District of Columbia Housing Finance Agency, where my late husband worked.
All righty. As a family member, not you, but as a family member. Okay, just want to make sure, understand that. And then I'll go down to number 10, provide a list, the location of any real property in which you have interest with a fair market value in excess of $5,000. Your address on
Primrose Road, Northwest Washington, D.C.
And that's the family home, you reside there?
Correct.
All right. And Number 11, which is always curious, do you have any outstanding liability for taxes, fees, or other payments to the district, federal, or other state or local governments, either contested or uncontested? If yes, please provide details.
No.
All right, thank you. And number 14, again, have you ever been investigated, disciplined, or cited for a breach of ethics or unprofessional conduct by, or been the subject of a complaint to any court, administrative agency, professional association, disciplinary committee, or other professional group?
No.
All right. And if you would list all boards and commissions connected with the district government of which you are or have been a member, and include the term of service for each.
None.
And then are you registered to lobby any local, state, or the federal government?
No, I'm not.
All right. And you left us with a pretty extensive answer to number 28, where you describe your qualifications, background, and expertise that you consider relevant to serving as the commissioner on the Housing Authority. Would you want to just articulate that for us today? It's pretty
Sure.
extensive.
I think it's probably it's a section of what I included in the testimony, but my very specifically my exposure to real estate in the affordable housing work that I did through my consulting practice. So I did perform services for a community development corporation, and then I've had some exposure in my current role to community development in general. And those serve as two areas within my body of work that have been very specific to the affordable housing community.
All right. And I will read and you'll fill in, your name?
Melissa Lee.
Attest and affirm.
Attest and affirm.
Under penalty of perjury.
Under penalty of perjury.
That the answers and materials provided.
That the answers and materials provided.
To the committee in response.
To the committee in response.
To this questionnaire.
To this questionnaire.
Are to the best of my knowledge.
Are to the best of my knowledge.
True, accurate, and complete.
True, accurate, and complete.
If confirmed. And
If
we're
confirmed.
now, okay. I agree without reservation.
I agree without reservation.
To respond to any summons to appear.
To respond to any summons to appear.
And testify before the committee.
And testify before the committee.
All right, and we have your signature on that document. I know it took us a little time, but that was, I thought, important so that everyone understands that this disclosure is very important for identifying maybe potential for conflict of interest or other matters that might cause any of our board members to feel compromised or not able to sit and deliberate on very important matters that you will have before you. So now I'll just ask if you have an opportunity to ask just a few questions. I think you pretty much covered your professional expertise and experience and how it might suit the situations that may arrive on the board. But I also wondered if you could just elaborate a little bit about your philosophy about public housing and how it fits into what we are experiencing in the district today, where we have persons of various incomes and they're all seeking housing at a price point where they can afford. And so want to make sure that we understand what you see on the horizon and how maybe the authorities' work will fit into this arena.
Sure. I believe that a community is made up of such a variety of residents, and it's important to have the diverse, not just when we talk about race or gender, but diverse socioeconomic statuses. That's really the fabric of a community. And I think it's also important when we think about a city like Washington, D.C., with a really a strong job market. It's important for people to have an option to be able to have a quality of life that allows them to live and work very close by. So I think the Housing Authority has a tremendous job to not only provide housing and secure housing for our residents that are not only, working towards increasing their incomes and making sure that they have somewhere that's safe, that's comfortable to live, but allows them to be able to focus on other areas of their life that will be beneficial in the same way that everyone else in the city across different social economic statuses are having the opportunity to do. And that makes up the whole community. So it's, we're not looking for homogenous communities. It's important to have just diversity at every different level.
Thank you for that. I wondered if you have some opinions, some thoughts or guidance that you might want to put in the airways today as it relates to public housing residents having the opportunity to become homeowners. And if you see the board moving or possibly looking at those kinds of programs.
Sure. So just generally speaking, I think that, home ownership, of course, is it's a cornerstone of the American dream. It's how people build generational wealth. It's very critical to family legacies. And so I am a huge proponent of everyone having the ability to access home ownership. I am not familiar enough with where or what the commission's current status or posture is on helping to bridge that divide, but I very strongly believe in home ownership, and I would welcome an opportunity to learn more and understand more about the commission, the Board of Commissioners' role and perspective, and what the vision is on moving that program. Okay.
You are being considered for or nominated for a public member, meaning that we also have public housing members who actually live in the properties that are, constantly, I guess, sort of cited in the news, as well as along with Ms. Harris, who is also in a subsidized kind of environment. And I wonder if you have some thoughts about how smoothly this process must be for people from different walks of life in the city coming together to talk about housing. How do we house our lowest income households or families?
Well, anytime you bring groups of people from different walks of life together, most certainly we all show up with our the background and the filters through which we have experienced life. But the Housing Authority has a very specific mission. The Board of Commissioners has a very specific responsibility. And I think that as we come together, if I'm actually confirmed, then I look at my participation in the expectation that we are really approaching the decision-making process in the context of what the goal of the Housing Authority and what the mission is. That's the filter through which we all come together from these different backgrounds in order to make decisions.
All right, well, this is a hot potato, Miss Lee. And Miss Harris, I'm asking her this because she was married to an executive director in our government who dealt with housing issues that many of us adored for his work. I'm wondering now, we're at a point where the board has to evaluate the director's job performance. Do you have any thoughts on how frequently that should occur? What should be the metrics or any of that? Just wondered.
Sure. I think that I just start with, perhaps just thinking about general, how jobs in general or companies in general may do performance evaluations, whether they're doing something annually or biannually. That's a starting place. And then from there, really understanding what the current practices are. And then how do we align that with just the industry standard and best practices of performance evaluation and metrics. I also, with respect to metrics, I most certainly would want to understand better what the strategic goals of the organization are, because that would inform how metrics would be set in terms of measurement.
Okay, and so now you're understanding the strategic goals. And as a board member, how would you hold the feet to the fire to accomplish the goals that have been the annual goals that are before you?
And so I think that in general, when we think about typical board and executive director relationships, there's ongoing monitoring through the board meetings as the organization moves through the workflow and moves through the processes for working out and delivering, executing on those goals. There's an opportunity to, or there's typically opportunities to have touch points and understand how the work is, how is it evolving, and what influences or external obstacles are occurring that may change or impact or accelerate the ability to deliver on particular goals as stated.
Well, thank you very much. My time is up because I did use a couple of minutes, I believe, in going through the disclosure. So I'll now turn to Councilmember Silverman for her 10 minutes.
Thank you, Councilmember Bonds. First, Ms. Lee, thank you for agreeing to be considered for this role. And I just want to take a moment, since actually Councilmember Bonds mentioned as well, I want to say that I worked in this role with your late husband, Todd Lee. And though I know some time has passed now, I do want to express my condolences. He was a fine man, and he was a pleasure to work with. So
Thank you.
Just wanted to mention that. And certainly, I'm sure he gives you a window into the role that you might take on very soon. So I do want to get a little better understanding of some of the answers that Councilmember Bonds referred to. So first, is the Lee Squared Consulting Group still in operation?
It's still a viable entity.
Okay, and so do you have any role in it currently?
Well, I'm the founder and the managing principal. There are no active contracts, but the organization, it exists, and it's
So
it
from
is an active organization just in terms of what the general definitions of a business entity.
So what
would
I
mean.
understand is that it's possibly incorporated in good standing, but has no current business contracts. Is that fair to say?
Correct.
Okay, gotcha. Do you anticipate that there might be any contracts while you are a DCHA board member?
I do not. I actually have transitioned into a full-time role. And so I'm focused on my current responsibilities. So I'm not anticipating any contractual work coming through the consulting.
Okay, so it's clear from your testimony and your resume that you do have a lot of finance experience, including some housing finance experience. Help me better understand your role and responsibilities at the Mankiti Group.
Sure. So the Mankiti Group, what I focus on, I sort of think about it in three buckets. There's capital, just, the excess capital that goes beyond funding day-to-day operations, which is available for a variety of investments. And so my team, we're responsible for the identification of that excess capital. We are responsible for the process of shepherding through an investment committee, how that funding is allocated to different projects, which could be anything from a real estate project to an operational investment.
Mm-hmm.
So we look at all the different opportunities to use the long-term capital. And then we have funds that we administer. And so there's sort of an operations and administrative role with respect to real estate investment funds.
Okay. Now, when I was talking with Ms. Harris, we talked about Kelsey Gardens, a project-based Section 8 community. Does Mankiti either have tenants who are project-based or have voucher tenants, and like is there any engagement between Mankiti and the DC Housing Authority? Any financial relationships? Okay, so there are no. Okay, great. So, and you don't foresee that Mankiti might be involved? Is Mankiti is largely does it have a development arm?
There is a development arm, and there is a high level of focus on development in the office, retail, and industrial space, as well as single family housing.
Okay.
It does not preclude multifamily, but that's not the sort of the general focus.
So I think you're anticipating where I'm going here. Obviously, DCHA has a portfolio of a lot of communities that are slated for redevelopment. Do you foresee that Mankiti might be involved or might want to bid on any of these deals?
I'm not aware of any intent to bid, but I don't work on the development. I'm not part of the development team, but I am not aware of any existing or current activities in terms of bidding.
Do you foresee any conflicts of interest between your professional responsibilities with Mankiti and your professional responsibilities serving as on the Board of Commissioners?
I do not.
Okay. If, for example, Mankiti group decided to put in a proposal through a request for proposals, what actions would you take then as a Board of Commissioners member?
If a proposal, if I was informed that a proposal was being submitted to DC Housing Authority, then I would speak with the appropriate people to ensure that I'm removed from all conversations or any actions or activities related to that particular engagement.
Okay. And do you think Menkidi, on the Menkidi side, would they be informing you of any? I assume they're aware that you have been nominated for this position. Are there also internal controls that are in place in the Menkidi group for your role on the Board of Housing Commissioners, in that they would alert you if they were involved in any kind of interested in bidding on something or have any involvement with DCHA?
I would be informed, and then I would follow up and ensure that I'm speaking with the appropriate officials for refusal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your answers. I know it's unpleasant for me to have to ask some of those questions and for you to have to answer, but to do our due diligence, I need to do that. I didn't have time to ask Ms. Harris, only just briefly. So DCHA's Board of Commissioners has been in the news. What are you aware of the ethics issues that have been raised? And I guess particularly with the removal or resignation of a commissioner, do you have an opinion on what happened there, and what created the ethics problem?
I don't have an
Oh,
opinion.
I'm sorry, Ms. Harris. I was asking Ms. Lee.
Oh, okay. I heard
Yeah, you got out of it by giving a very compelling answer about your use of DCHA programs. But I appreciate you wanting to answer that one. Ms. Lee, I would love to hear your answer.
Sure. I am aware of some of the headlines that most certainly have sort of arisen with respect to commissioners. I wouldn't say that I have a current opinion. I'm very deferential to the facts and just what my current relationship is, which at this time there isn't one with the Board of Commissioners. So I do reserve in the absence of facts and just understanding what exactly has happened. I haven't formed an opinion out of deference for my current role and lack of availability of information around the actual activities.
Okay. You said you're not familiar. Do you know, not familiar with any of the Board of Commissioners currently? Did I hear that correctly? Or do you know any of the
I said,
folks?
given that I don't have familiarity, so just given that I'm not on the actively in the role, I recognize that there's limited information that I have access to at this
Gotcha.
point.
Since my time is running out, I'll just ask this succinctly. So given your role and relationships, I imagine you, and I see that you did give money to the mayor. You know, part of the concern people have had is about the independence of commissioners and the ability to ask questions and say no to the deputy mayor and essentially to the mayor. So I'm going to give you a softball here. You know, can you assure us that you can maintain an independent voice, and even though you might have support the mayor, that you will do your due diligence to ask the difficult questions and sometimes challenge authority about what's best for DCHA residents?
Yes, I think that I would continue, as I've done in my career, thinking about this the same way in the past when I work with colleagues and bosses, that there's a level of integrity and a level of due diligence that we operate with, and that there's a way to maintain that with healthy discourse, and again, with maintaining the focus on delivering goals.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Congratulations again. Thank you both, Ms. Harris, Ms. Lee, and thank you, Councilmember Bonds.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman Silverman, and thank you, Ms. Harris and Ms. Lee, for your testimony. And I know, Ms. Harris, you seemingly want to answer more. If you have a closing comment that you would like to share, please do so. It's fine.
No, I just want to thank you all for your time and consideration. And I really enjoyed my first board commission roundtable. And I look forward to working with you all if possible. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. Ms. Lee, in all fairness, I have to give you also, if you want to have closing comment.
I'd just like to thank the committee, the staff, and the council members present for the opportunity to testify, and look forward to an opportunity to work with, to continue working with the committee as well as the Housing Authority Board of Commissioners.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you both. And we're now going to turn to another segment of our government that we're very happy to entertain. And so we're going to turn to Mr. Ofemi Abayemi Hall. And we want to hear your testimony because we want to learn more about your interest in being on the Tax Appeals Commission. So if you would give us your testimony, sir, you're up.
All right.
And welcome
Thank
for
you.
being so patient.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Chairperson Bonds, Councilperson Silverman, members of the Committee on Housing and Executive Administration and staff. First, I would like to say thank you to the committee for holding this roundtable on my nomination, and Mayor Bowser for appointing me to serve on the Real Property Tax Appeals Commission. I believe that my almost 2 decades of experience will make a positive addition to the mission of the Real Property Tax Appeals Commission. The goal of the commission is to weigh the evidence presented before it and decide the cases based on the merits. And my background in real estate has prepared me for such a role. Having come before the commission since its inception, I am also familiar with the types of issues that come before it, and I believe I can fairly and impartially rule on those issues. Before I go deeper into my qualifications, a little bit about me. I'm originally from Fort Washington, Maryland. I'm the youngest of 5 siblings. My parents immigrated to the United States from Lagos, Nigeria. Growing up, my parents instilled in me and my siblings that education was a key to success. I attended college at the University of Maryland in College Park, where I received a Bachelor of Arts in Government and Politics. I've lived in the district since 2017. And I have, like I mentioned earlier, I have over 16 years of experience working in the field of real estate, including the valuation of residential, commercial, hotel, and industrial properties. I began my career as a residential assessor in Charles County, Maryland, where my duties included inspecting and evaluating residential properties, as well as defending those values at all 3 levels of the appeals process. I then transitioned into a role as a commercial assessor for Charles County, focusing on valuing all types of commercial property. During my time with the state of Maryland, I was promoted to a supervisory role where I managed 7 employees, reviewed and approved employees' assessments of newly constructed residential properties, managed work schedules to ensure proper adequate coverage, approved time, and resolved any employee conflicts. In 2011, I first began a position as an appraiser with the District of Columbia government. In my current role as a senior appraiser with the District of Columbia Office of Tax and Revenues, I assess large commercial office buildings for ad valorem tax purposes. In this role, I conduct market and sales research, review income and expense statements, inspect properties, and determine estimated market value of properties based on primarily an income analysis. I also present these analyses and rationales to property owners and their legal representatives at the 3 levels of appeals process, and I negotiate value reductions based on market data and the evidence provided by property owners. Throughout my professional career, I've taken several courses offered by the International Association of Assessing Officers, the Appraisal Institute, and the Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice to keep myself appraised of developments and best practices. Thank you for your consideration for this position. This concludes my testimony, and I welcome any questions you may have.
Well, thank you very much for your testimony. And again, I'll go through your disclaimer document quickly with you. Number 7 is provide the name of each business entity from which you or your immediate family have received or are receiving income in excess of $1,000 for services rendered during the past 5 years. And I think you list 2. You want to put that on the record, sir?
My wife's employment for the last 5 years, Ryan Law and First American Financial Corporation.
All
Myself,
right.
I was
And
gonna say,
yourself?
myself, I've been an employee of the District of Columbia for the last 5 years.
Okay. And number 13, have you ever been investigated, disciplined, arrested, charged, or convicted, including plea of guilty by any federal, state, or other law enforcement authority for violation of any federal, state, county, or municipal law other than a minor traffic offense? If so, could you give us your answer for the record?
I have not.
All righty. And I'll try to move here to might be of interest. This is to the political affiliation and activities. If you would itemize any political contribution to any candidate, political party, political committee, action committee, constituent service fund, or similar entry of $25 or more in the past few years.
My wife contributed about $200 to the campaign of Brooke Pinto in 2020.
All right. And you meant in your background, you mentioned you provided a summary of changes or improvements that you hope to make in the Real Property Tax Appeals Commission. Can you articulate that for the record?
Which question are you referring to?
It's number 2. Summary of any changes or improvements you hope to make at the Real Property Tax Appeals Commission. Related to communications and things like that?
Well, yes, I think it's important to have more outreach with the general public and give them a better opportunity to be able to know what best information to bring before the RPTAC Commission to explain why they're appealing to the commission and what matters as far as what information to present for their appeals.
Okay. All right. And so then with and then you say your name.
I, Olufemi Abami Paul.
Attest and affirm under penalty
Attest and affirm under penalty
of perjury that the answers and materials
under perjury that the answer and materials
provided to the committee in response
provided to the committee in response
to this questionnaire
are
to the best of my knowledge
to the best of my knowledge
true, accurate, and complete,
true, accurate, and complete.
if confirmed.
If confirmed,
I agree with reservation to respond to any summons without any reservation
I agree without any, agree to without any reservations
to respond to any summons
to respond to any summons
to appear and testify before the committee.
to appear and testify before the committee.
All right, it's on the record. Thank you very much for that. I did want to go back to one area. You mentioned, it says, what role, if any, do you believe the racial disparity has played on the real estate tax assessments of residential and commercial real estate in the district historically and through present time? So could you give us an answer on the record, sir?
I mean, historically, you have the areas that were minority and lower income were valued at a lower rate comparative to some areas of higher income in the city, whereas now you have a situation that some of these same areas are not being valued at that same low rate, and you have a problem of racial disparities because now with that increase in valuation, you have a problem as keeping the people in those particular areas, given the increased cost of home ownership and cost of the taxes that are associated with those valuations.
Okay, so one of the questions that we get when we're in community, and really quite frequently, is from homeowners of these large homes, and they're owned by retirees. And they're wondering if there is an opportunity for them to have their tax bill sort of stabilized where it is today, irrespective of what's going on maybe next door or within the block that they live, through sales. They're wondering if their tax would be held until such time as the property changes hands. Do you have any thoughts on that? Because that's a common concern that I get.
Well, the role of the RPTAC Commission is to find the fair market value of the property. And in my career, that the fair market value is one thing, and the taxes that are applied to that fair market value is a discussion better left to people in political positions. So I would defer any questions about taxes to the chairman of the RPTAC or the council or the mayor. I would be, if I was appointed confirmed to the commission, I think my goal would be to look at the information that's presented and come up with, decide on the fair market value of the property, not thinking of the tax burden that is associated with that market value.
Okay, I appreciate getting your response to that. Can you outline some of the successes and challenges in property assessments that you have witnessed during the pandemic?
Some of the successes, and could you repeat your question, please?
Yes, some of the successes or challenges in property assessments that you have witnessed during the pandemic. I mean, are there more difficult times, or are there better parts of community, or community doing better than others?
So obviously, COVID has changed the world, and we're still in the midst of that. But it's been, like you said, there's been good, there's been bad. And you look at each property individually, but sometimes you have situations where the lease, you have a law firm that, their lease was up, they wanted to move, and they signed a long-term lease, and they're in the building for 15 years. So that would be a success story. Obviously, the retail has suffered. People aren't in offices, so you see a lot of storefronts. I used to live downtown, so a lot of storefronts, they are just not there anymore. So, but at the same token, you see retails that have that national following, they're able to take up some of that space. So it's a mixed bag. I haven't seen one way or another that everyone is suffering or benefiting the same. Every property has kind of been unique, and there's been challenges and successes on both sides.
So while we have businesses that have left the city because of issues through the pandemic, how do you see that vacant real estate impacting the community, let's say over the next 2 or 3 years? Do you see new businesses coming into the city and taking over the real estate? And if they take it over, will they be given a 3-year lease or 10-year lease? Just what's going on in the real estate community, the commercial real estate community now from your perspective?
I think it all depends. When you say people are leaving the district, yes, they leave the district, but you never know what's going to happen to that property in the future. I was reading an article just today. There's a vacant office building at, I believe it's 1425 Pennsylvania Avenue that just sold, and it's going to be redeveloped into apartments. So there's no way of knowing the circumstances beforehand. Is a new business going to come in? Are they going to repurpose the property for something else? So I would try to look at properties. Generally, you would want to look at properties on an individual basis and see what's the reality of that property and what's going to happen to that property. It's kind of hard to paint with a broad brush for real estate.
Okay, so let me ask you one other question, sir. What do you consider to be the main objective for a full-time commissioner at the commission? And what kind of milestones would you set for the work that you would do?
My opinion, the position, the first goal of the full-time commission is to listen to the arguments on both sides from the public and the government and weigh those decisions and come up with a fair market value for each individual property. As far as milestones and goals I would set, there's for me, always getting my work done on time and meeting deadlines is always a goal that I like to achieve. For RPTAC, there's a statutory date where they're supposed to be finished. And for me, that would be my major goal, is to meet that statutory date. When people come before the commission, they typically say that they want to get the decisions out within 80 days. And I think that's a goal that if I was affirmed to the commission, that I would want to make sure that I always was able to meet, that I would get the decisions out. They would be fair decisions based on the information that's presented at the hearing. And that's what I would want to adhere to.
Well, just changing speed a little here. Do you think that there are policies and practices that appraisers should deploy to address racial inequities in real estate tax assessments?
I think generally separating myself for the RPTAC Commission, if we're just talking about appraisers, I think you have to be cognizant of society and what's going on in society and what how those things would affect the fair market value of the property that you're looking at. And I'm not sure how you would quantify that on the different property types. It might be easier to make a percentage adjustment on a house. I'm not sure how you make that, how you'd want to make it on an income producing property, but just being aware of the situation that you find yourself in. One of the first things you have to do as an appraiser when you want to appraise a property is you want to know your location, you want to know what goes into your location, you want to know the general you want to know the general background of your the place that you're appraising your property in. I don't think you can come up with an accurate appraisal if you just blindly try to appraise a property without knowing the realities on the ground.
All right, well, I thank you very much. I recognize that my colleague is no longer with us, as she mentioned might be the case. And so I will now turn to our public. We have a few public witnesses that want to put their opinions on the record. And they are, okay, Mr. Thomas Dawes and Mr. Denis Anasike. If you are both available, we'd love to hear from you now. We'll start with Mr. Dawes. All right, okay.
Good afternoon.
All right, how are you doing, sir? Good afternoon to you.
Doing fine, doing fine. Thank you for asking. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on behalf of Ms. Melissa Lee to become the next District of Columbia Housing Board Commissioner. My name is Thomas Dawes, and I reside at 1653 38th Street, Southeast, Washington, D.C. And I have known Ms. Lee for over 3 years. I met her initially as a former consultant at the Development Corporation of Columbia Heights. Her responsibilities included handling aspects of the Chief Financial Officer activities for the organization. Ms. Lee's capabilities and skill level are excellent and provide vital elements to the organization in ensuring the mission of offering affordable housing and economic development in Ward 1 and throughout the city to meet the high expectations required by the general public. Ms. Lee prepared all of the financial reporting to assure the organization's financial status met positive sustainability and included having the financial capacity continue the organization's success in providing housing and economic development opportunities in the District of Columbia. Ms. Lee brought significant changes in the accounting and financial procedures of Development Corporation Columbia Heights, and the work performed was beyond excellent, and including having the right personality in dealing with people's issues in a very significant way. In conclusion, the residents and staff had a lot of respect and trust in Ms. Lee's daily work at the organization. Ms. Lee's professional and educational background expertise is superb and has provided significant accomplishments in the DMV metropolitan area, including financial management responsibilities for substantial corporations in the area. She has a beautiful personality in working with public people and is always committed to providing the best results to clients and customers. In conclusion, The mayor's recommendation to appoint Ms. Melissa Lee as a board commissioner, without a doubt, in her selection, the District of Columbia Housing Authority will have a genuine, sincere, committed new District of Columbia Housing and Board Commissioner who would meet the challenges and provide excellent guidance to the mission and vision of the District of Columbia Housing Authority. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dawes. Thank you very much for your testimony. And now I think we have Mr. Denis. Is it Anasike or is it Anasike? Mr. All right. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Barnes. My name is Denis Anasike. I am the Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer for Washington Metro. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak before your committee today in support of Ms. Lee's nomination as Public Commissioner of the District of Columbia Housing Authority Board of Commissioners. I don't know if my camera is showing. Seem to be having technical problems on my side. Can you hear me, please? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. I first met Ms. Lee about 7 years ago when I joined Metro, all the way from Chicago. During her tenure at Metro, she served as manager for debt, investments, and treasury operations, and later as director of treasury operations. And based on her performance for a period of time, she was actually moved up to interim treasurer for Metro before she chose to go to a different organization. As the leader, Ms. Lee managed a large team of professionals responsible for Metro's cash and debt portfolio management, including capital market execution and investor relations. She implemented cash flow strategies to improve liquidity and provided regular stakeholder communications to increase financial transparency. Her team successfully issued and managed over $1 billion of debt to support Metro's operating and capital investment needs, structuring complex portfolios comprising short-term credit facilities, tax-exempt bonds, and bank loans that required capital market expertise and proactive oversight of outstanding debt obligations and effective communication. Finally, Madam Chair, Ms. Lee was also a financial steward of several Metro retirement plans, and in that role, understands clearly the compliance as well as investment confidence and the need to build and sustain confidence in stakeholders and funding agencies. Thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing me to appear here today, and that concludes my remarks.
Well, thank you very much for your remarks. We appreciate getting them, and thank you for your patience. Again, Mr. Dawes, thank you for your patience as well. And we have your information on the record. If you would like to submit written testimony, we'll include it in the written report from today's hearing. So please do so. We have until, let me give you the date. The record will be open until, I think it is, hope it's here. Until Friday, December 17th, 2021, if you could get us that. So it's a short window, but we are trying to get the record filed as quickly as possible. I also would include in the record testimony, written testimony we received from Denise Holmes, Jeffrey Humber, Shanika L. Smith, Gloria Sutton, John Daniels, Carlene Dancy, Brandy Smalls, Derek Morton, and Chanel Ozaby. So they will also have their testimony included in the record. With there being no additional business before us today, this is a roundtable. I'll close with letting the public know if there's anyone in the public that wants to provide any additional thoughts or would like to submit written testimony regarding today's nominees, please email housing@dccouncil, DC Council, one word, .us. And the record will close at 5 p.m. on Friday, the 17th of December, 2021. And this concludes today's roundtable. And with that, the time is 3:14 p.m. and this meeting is adjourned. And thank you, everyone.